Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Big Questions, Small Steps. My name is Amanda and I'm so glad that you could join me today. Today we are covering a topic that quite honestly stresses me out just because there's so many aspects to this topic that I don't completely understand. But it's also one that is very important, particularly in the United States of America, because it represents us to the world. Today, we're talking about the upcoming presidential election. Specifically, we're going to talk about the two current candidates, and we're going to talk about some of their strengths, some of their weaknesses, and we're going to talk in particular during my research on the different candidates and their different stances. Now, I am not a political professor. I don't know all, end all, be all. I just do some research and I'm sharing this information with you. I encourage you to do your own research, but let's talk about the good, bad, and the ugly that is the current election so we can get some more knowledge. Are you ready? Let's dive in. So for the 2024 election, there is currently a couple of people in the running. The two main parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, have elected their nominees. The current Republican nominee is Donald Trump. He did have a term in office already as the President of the United States. The current Democratic nominee is Kamala Harris, and she was the vice president for the former president, Joe Biden. Joe Biden was running as a re-election campaign, and then in late July, he actually stepped down due to health reasons and wanting to focus on the family and things like that. So Kamala, that's how you pronounce it. I always pronounce it wrong for some reason. I apologize. She stepped up at the Republican convention. Not the Republican convention, the Democratic convention, and threw her hat into the ring, and she was very quickly accepted and endorsed by the Democratic committee. There was talk for a while of Joe Biden pulling from the race and who would step in, and there were a couple of names floated around, but nobody had any real backing. So the current people are Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Now, both people are just people who have faults and flaws and pluses and minuses, just like everybody else. Okay, you can find good things and bad things about each one. I'm not trying to pit one against another. We just want to share some information. Okay, so looking at Kamala Harris, she does have a government background. She was a prosecutor in California, worked in the attorney law that way. She then became a U.S. state senator. So she has experience in government. She was the vice president under Joe Biden, and that's where she is that brought us today. She is a very diverse candidate. She notes that she has Asian American background and Black background and Hispanic background. She has a mix of different things. So some people say that's good because it represents more of the masses that are in the United States. And she is noted as being very approachable. So you can have a conversation with her. She welcomes people to engage in dialogue. Okay. On the flip side, Donald Trump is a well-known businessman. He has made some deals that some people say are very savvy. Some people say are kind of shady. He's a businessman. Businessmen are in the business of running their business. So they're going to look out for their business and their best interests. Another benefit of his is he doesn't care necessarily what other people think of him. Again, that can be a good or a bad thing. But sometimes when you care so much about what someone thinks, you are afraid to make the steps necessary to make your company grow. Okay. Another good aspect of Donald Trump is he is a risk taker who follows through. If he says he's going to do something, he's actually going to do it. He made the claim of let's build the wall, and he started building a wall between the United States and Mexico. Again, whether you agree or disagree with that decision, he made the claim and he started to follow through on it. Not finished, but he started to follow through. That just is the kind of person he is. Now, on the negative side, if we flip to the negative, because again, everybody has both positive and negative traits. Camilla is known to be very unclear when speaking of what her plans are for her presidency. She speaks in very broad terms and doesn't necessarily seem to have a specific plan that she has articulated to people. She also has received some criticism from others saying that her personality is kind of brash, and people make fun of her laugh, saying it's too forced, and her interactions with people at times can be too forced. Okay. Donald Trump, on the other side, for his negatives, he has a tendency to put his foot in his mouth, for lack of a better word choice. He will say things because he doesn't care about what people say or think about him. He'll say things and he doesn't necessarily have a filter to clear up what's coming out of his mouth. He is also deemed as quite unapproachable by some, and others have even went as far as to say that other countries don't like dealing with him because he is making a mockery of the government systems as a whole. So again, positive and negatives for both. Each one has strong importance. Now, in the United States of America, voting is extremely important. And it is important for when you vote that you vote not just on who you think looks better. It's important to vote on all the characteristics that they embody as a person, how they hold themselves, because they're going to represent the United States to the world and their interactions, but also on a whole bunch of different issues, because they're going to be essentially the spokesperson for the United States. So let's take a look at some of the different issues and the different stances, and I'll share what my thoughts are just so you can see how I reason through it. Again, I'm not saying one is better than the other or endorsing one over another, just sharing the information with you so you can make an educated decision. Okay? So in looking at issues, there are a bunch of different areas. We're going to look at the economy or economics. We're going to look at education, foreign policy, as well as social issues. And within each of those areas, there are different topics. So let's just get started, okay? So looking at economy first, specifically regarding electric vehicles, okay? Electric vehicles. Kamala is very encouraging of electric vehicle manufacturing, and she believes that this creates more of a climate conscious society. Not a bad thing. Former President Trump views electric vehicles as a threat to the auto industry. Again, he's very pro-America, and America was very strong in the automotive industry. There was a lot of auto manufacturing things. So he sees electric vehicles as a threat to them. He has stated he's not necessarily against them in general, but he does want a reliable choice for people. So in regards to that issue, I personally, I've seen some things about electric vehicles that are good and some that are bad. I view them as a fire hazard, me personally, and I've seen their charging stations, which are typically powered by a generator, so I don't see necessarily the benefit. I personally side more with Trump on that issue. Okay, so in the second area of the economy, looking at housing in particular, Kamala is a strong advocate for federal programs to expand affordable housing. So whether that's keeping rent prices down or getting that affordable housing, loans, things like that. On the opposite side, former President Trump encourages construction of new homes on cheaper lands at the edge of cities and in suburban areas where he believes the land is less expensive. So creating more of an urban sprawl thing. On that issue, I'm quite honestly torn. I like the idea of creating a space where housing is more affordable and it's close to jobs for those that don't have transportation. I also think that there is an importance in people being able to own something that is theirs, and you should be able to build where it's suitable for your life. So I'm torn on that one. Looking at the economy and Social Security. So Social Security is basically when you're working, you pay a certain amount on each paycheck to the government to hold in this. It's kind of like a retirement account that you can start collecting from when you get to a certain age in the United States. Kamala says there shouldn't be any cuts to Social Security, but she does believe that they should ask people who have a higher income to quote unquote pay their fair share. So it's, again, a certain percentage that each paycheck goes to Social Security, and she believes that depending on your income, you should have to pay in more. On the other side, former President Trump has had mixed feelings about Social Security. So at times, he has stated that he wasn't going to cut Social Security at all, but he has also stated that, quote unquote, there is a lot to do in terms of cutting, a lot you could do in terms of cutting, alluding to the fact that he would prefer to address the problems within Social Security through adding additional revenue or spending less overall. And the problems, if you're not from the United States of America, the problems with Social Security is that it's ending essentially because the people who are receiving the benefits are living longer, and there's more people claiming than are putting in. So that's the problem currently. The last one in the economy area is trade. Okay, and Kamala is basically undecided. She said she's opposed to across-the-board tariffs on imported products, but is intrigued that perhaps targeted tariffs, such as against certain countries that have unfair trade practices or certain products like steel and aluminum, could be beneficial. So because she's so unsure, she hasn't made a decision. Former President Trump has indicated that he would like to do a 10% tariff on all imported goods across the board to make an even playing field. He even likes to hint at the idea that those that have skeptical trade practices, or he has skepticism as far as business practices, could face higher tariffs as far as 50 or 60%, mainly speaking on China at that point. So I like, in that area in particular, I like the idea that Trump has where it's all imported items have a set tariff, because you're creating a standard. And it's not specifically targeting different countries. It's just kind of making an even playing field. And at the same time, it's focusing on buying products from your country, if at all possible, and making that more of a draw for people. I like that idea. That makes sense to me. Okay. In the next area that we're going to look at, it's education. So as a former public school teacher, education is something, whenever I've been looking at a political system voting, that I've probably held on to the most and that with the highest regard as far as people's positions, and I will vote specifically on their education stance. So in regards to education, Kamala says that it's a fundamental right. She claims that she wants to add universal pre-K for all. She also wants to have debt-free college. She says that there should be increased teacher pay. They should have more invested in the curriculum and not having it be so one-sided. She also wants to invest more in historically Black colleges and universities. All good stuff. As a former teacher, I definitely support that teachers could get paid more because, yep, it's tough. But I don't know if that's the right fit overall, because in particular the debt-free colleges, while it sounds great, I paid for my college and I had people that I went to school with who their parents paid for college. And I can tell you from personal experience, the amount of effort and energy you put in when it's your pay that is funding the classes is different. It's evident and it shows. And I think there should be some skin in the game when it comes to education. Now, Trump on the other side, he says they should eliminate federal education regulations overall. He wants to take all the federal rules and regulations, so federal regulations such as IDEA, Individuals with Disability Education Act, all of those different federal rules, particularly for special education students, he wants to take them all away and he wants to give all the power to the state and local governments and have them handle education. He also wants to eliminate teacher tenure and encourage school choice. This sounds empowering, but I was a special education teacher for a number of years in the public education system. So the idea of not having any consistency with special education laws and funding is really messy in my head. And as a former educator, it's concerning for me, just because if you have a student who moves from Texas to Wisconsin to Michigan to Florida to West Virginia, moving is hard enough in and of itself. And then when you have each of those different moves, vastly different experiences and expectations, it can make it very difficult for a child to continue to grow. I have cousins who lived in Wisconsin for their entire elementary school, and then in middle school they moved to North Carolina, I believe it was, and their schooling, while great and their teachers were great, they were on average 2 years behind what they were covering content-wise in Wisconsin. So it's not quite the same. I see the need for a federal oversight at some level. Perhaps it could decrease, but I like that there is the federal level for education, me personally. I don't necessarily agree with school choice in every circumstance, because there are times where funding is pulled from the public school system and given to schools that aren't vetted and don't have to be held to the same standards, and that makes it challenging to create a level playing field for everybody. So it's different. So I'm out of the education realm now, gratefully. So, but that's something I'm still wishy-washy about, and it doesn't quite have clarity for me yet. I'll keep researching in that. The other aspect of education regarding forgiving student debt. And again, I went on my spiel about my personal belief about attending college. So Kamala, she supports debt relief for public servants. So she believes like teachers, people who serve the public in general should have their debt erased. She believes you should have debt-free colleges, and she also believes in income-based repayment for loans. Again, all of that is great, but going to college isn't something that everyone wants to do nor needs to do. Plumbers are extremely important. There are people in trades that can do things that I could never do. They don't need a 4-year degree for that. They need different things, and I don't think that they should feel less than because they didn't go to a 4-year school. Their pay is certainly more than mine, and rightfully so, because they have skills and abilities that I don't have. So I disagree with that one. Former President Trump says no, there shouldn't be student debt forgiveness. He quotes that it would be very unfair to the millions of people who have paid their debt through hard work and diligence. Again, I see his point. I could go slightly different, and I could see like a waiver program where maybe you went to school for this and you didn't have the funds to pay it back. Maybe a certain percentage could be forgiven after a certain period of time, but that's not the case right now. So that's the education policies on both. So the next area that we're going to look at for the two candidates is foreign policy. Foreign policy is broken up into 3 main points, okay? So the first one is Israel/Gaza, okay? 2 very different viewpoints, and I'm going to state right off the bat that I am biased. As the man I love is Jewish, I am on the path of converting to Judaism. So this topic in particular is a hot button for myself. So that's just my preference before we get started. Kamala, her stance on foreign policy regarding Israel and Gaza, she has a big push for de-escalation. She says that the U.S. should help a ceasefire deal to return hostages. She promotes a 2-state solution. So 2-state solution, in case you didn't know, is basically where Palestine and Israel are allowed to exist in the same area, and like different boundaries are set up so that it creates a peaceful place, okay? She argues that Israel's right to defend itself and eliminate Hamas is non-negotiable, that they should be able to. She also did something that was not the best. So the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, came to give a speech to Congress, and she, as the Democratic nominee, skipped that speech. She attended a sorority event that she already had planned. I think it was in South Carolina. So that just kind of looks bad as far as her foreign policy on Israel and Gaza. Okay. But former President Trump says that he would push for a quick end to the war that began with the October 7th attacks. He hasn't suggested necessarily support for Palestine. He hasn't suggested what the U.S. should do or how the U.S. should support Israel, but he just has pushed for a quick end, and he has said that Israel would have his full support. So knowing what I know about the October 7th attacks, I would love to say that I would be very happy for a ceasefire, de-escalation, but it's really tough to come to an agreement when of the 2 sides, one of them just doesn't want the other one to exist. I don't know how you can come to a neutral stance and coordinate that. I know that Israel, the longer it's going on, more countries are trying to attack them just for existing. And I personally side with Trump on this issue in particular, because Israel has been a partner with the U.S. for a long time, and they're getting attacked, and there's no way around it. And just me and my bias, no, it's not okay. And it's not okay to just sit on your hands and try to critique someone who's just trying to exist when you're not willing to support that. Just me. The next issue of foreign policy is regarding NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is what it stands for. Kamala is very supportive of NATO and all international alliances. She believes that people should work together to work smarter, not harder. Former President Trump supports NATO, but he has also not been shy about holding the other countries that are part of NATO their feet to the fire a little bit more, so that they don't rely as heavily on the U.S. to fund different things and to give their defenses without offering support from these other countries. So basically, President Trump is saying it's all well and good to be working together, but if, I don't know, for example, Spain is always saying, okay, well, U.S., you can do this, and U.S., you can do this, but they're not contributing financially, they're not contributing with other means, then there should not be that allegiance and organization, because it's not. It's basically a group of countries telling the U.S. you should do this. So he's wanting it to be more of a level playing field. So I like that. The other foreign policy issue that they talk about particularly is Ukraine. And Ukraine and Russia were having a great big war for a long time. It was a big deal for a long time, and it's kind of dropped off the radar for many, but it's still going on. So Kamala says that there should be arms and supports for Ukraine for as long as it takes for them to continue holding out. So the U.S. should support them by providing different things for them. And she also believes that when Moscow expresses genuine interest in a peace talk, then the U.S. should assist in negotiating that peace talk. Okay? Former President Trump says that there should be military support to end the war between the Ukraine and Russia, but that it should move swiftly, and he hints that he would do so utilizing his connections with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, and he sees that the aid provided to Ukraine to end this debacle would be more of a loan than a gift. So he's expecting repayment of these funds and things like this at some point, where if I'm reading between the lines, it sounds like Kamala isn't expecting. So I can see both sides. I like the idea of coming to a peace talk, just me not wanting to be confrontational. But at the same time, you don't, for the sake of the people that live there, I wouldn't want anyone to have to live in that war zone, that territory, that unrest for extended periods of time. That does incredibly damaging things to your psyche, to your development, to your life. So I can see parts from Kamala's plan being more successful, and I can see parts from former President Trump's plan to be more successful on that one. And then we have 5 social issues. And these are hot topics again. Again, there is no person that has everything right and everything wrong. Everyone has their different opinions. We're going to touch on all 5 and share the different viewpoints so that you can make an educated choice. Okay? So the first social issue is regarding abortion. So Kamala has been very vocal about a woman's right to take care of their health. So she would be a very big proponent, not necessarily of returning Roe versus Wade to the courts. Roe versus Wade was a very important lawsuit that the Supreme Court essentially took down, a couple of years ago. And she would like to return some of the protections that were in Roe versus Wade. She doesn't want that exact lawsuit back on there, but she wants some of the protections of women being able to make choices for their body and for their health back afforded to them without getting that negativity on themselves. Okay. Former President Trump has flirted with the idea of having a complete nationwide abortion ban. But he did decide that it would be best if he handed that decision over to the states instead. And he wanted to make sure that there were exemptions for rape and incest, the life and health of a woman, and things like that. But his big stance is he does oppose taxpayer funded abortions. So he doesn't want abortions that are funded by the taxpayers, certainly. So again, I personally wouldn't choose an abortion for me personally, but I can also understand that if a person is in such a tough spot that they don't see anywhere else, I personally wouldn't judge them for that, but I certainly would advise them of different options. Again, that's just me personally. I like that there are options for different people. I want them to, if they can't find any other way, if for their life and safety they need to have an abortion, I want them to be able to have an abortion in a place that's safe and they will not be causing more detriment to themselves. That's me. The second social issue that they look at is climate change. So Kamala is very supportive of the Green New Deal. Basically, they ban offshore drilling. They charge businesses that pollute. There's different timelines of when there's certain new things that are more economically friendly across the world to help protect our climate. Former President Trump, he says that there should be cut regulations on industries because he opposes the new Green Deal. They are designed, in his words, to shut down the development of America's abundant resources. So on this issue, I side more with Kamala because I think what we have as far as resources in the world in general is limited. There is a finite amount and you need to have a balance. Now, do I think we need to tax everybody through the nose in order to achieve those results? I don't think so. I think we need to work smarter, not harder. And I think if industries put money behind doing additional resource to find the best and healthiest ways to create these products, we will live in a healthier world in general. I know that the environment, if you live in a polluted place, makes for more health concerns of the people. That's just how it works. So on that issue, I side more with Kamala. The third social issue is on immigration. Okay, so Kamala was tagged by former President Biden, or President Biden, because he's still current, to examine the quote-unquote root causes of Central America migration. And she opposes separating families. She thinks they should be an extended limit for asylum seekers. That's where she stands. Former President Trump says he wants to eliminate all asylum fraud. He focuses on rapidly removing illegal alien gang members and criminals. This one I'm very torn on because I don't think a majority of people that are here that happen to be illegal citizens are gang members and criminals. I think most people are here just trying to find a better life, I think, but now that could just be me having grandiose ideas. I do think that if people come here, they should do it legally, and I feel that we are a country of immigrants, so I think there should be a vetting process, and there should be a process where you can enter legally. But I also believe that if you are here, there should be a process for you as well. When I was a teacher, I had many students who were amazing individuals, but they happened to not be legal citizens. The third social issue is marijuana. I personally have never enjoyed marijuana, but I've heard people who have, and I also know that medically wise, there's a lot of benefits to marijuana. So Kamala's stance on marijuana is it is a controlled substance. She believes she worked hard with the Controlled Substance Act, or CSA, to reschedule cannabis, decriminalizing it at the federal level. So kind of making more room for it to be used in society. Former President Trump supports cannabis for medical purposes, and supports state legalizing marijuana if they choose. So giving, again, more power to the states. So in that comparison, I side more with President Trump. I like the idea of using it for medical purposes. I do think just with anything, there should be some kind of oversight for how you utilize things. People can take anything and claim that it helps, but if there's not an oversight, you don't know when it crosses that line between helping and harming. So that's just me personally. And then the last social issue that I researched was particularly regarding transgender rights. Kamala is very supportive of the LGBTQ rights and wants to expand Title IX protection. Title IX protection is basically in schools that girls have equal opportunity to do sports that boys do, essentially. She wants to expand that protection also to trans individuals. So that's what she wants to do. Former President Trump opposes transgender rights and discourages the promotion of gender transitions for Americans at any age, and particularly for minors, he equates that to child abuse. So that one I feel is a gray area, and I think there's a lot more research that needs to be done on the issues of transgender and how to help them. I personally don't think that's an area where the federal government should be getting involved. Me personally. So there are multiple different things that I side with President Trump on, former President Trump on, and there are multiple things that I side more with Kamala on. I'm, again, not here to tell you which one you should vote for or who you should vote for, but I do want to encourage you, if you live in the United States of America, to vote, because your voice matters. Your voice matters. Do your own research, and when you do research, also do it carefully. Make sure that you are looking at not just one site, but multiple sites, and do better than I did, where you don't focus on just one issue that's important to you. Try to pick a couple, because as I showed him in the list that we went through today, there are things that I side with one person on and things that I side with another person on. So you need to kind of look at the whole picture and figure out what's best in your opinion, what's best for the United States of America, because this person will be our leader for the next 4 years. So if you enjoyed today's presentation, please go ahead and like and subscribe to our channel so you can be notified for more videos when they come to go. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I appreciate it greatly. And hopefully you learned a little something, because the more we know, the more we grow. Until next time, bye-bye.